Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible impact. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission? Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I'm your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders, and a power wheelchair user. I'm the Community Relations Manager at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights trial attorney and advocate focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today on accessiBe Spotlight Sessions, we're joined by Alyson Stover, the president of the American Occupational Therapy Association. Welcome, Alyson.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you today, Josh.
I am as well, Alyson. Let's just dive right into it. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I am an occupational therapist. I have been an occupational therapist for almost 20 years now, which seems weird because I thought I was only 25. But I really was introduced to the profession when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I had a young cousin who was like a baby sister to me, and she had experienced a traumatic brain injury. And so I got to really walk through what occupational therapy looked like in the acute care when she was in the hospital, through like intensive inpatient programming, all the way through outpatient, what it looked like in school, what it looked like in the community. And I fell in love with the profession, and I really thought, this is exactly what I want to do. And so I've been doing that. And with each year, I learn a little bit more about our profession and some of the cool things that we just work to make the world something that everybody can participate in. And so as I began to learn more about it, I got more involved with my state association, the Pennsylvania Occupational Therapy Association. And then that led to some more opportunities to volunteer with the National Association, the American Occupational Therapy Association, AOTA. So currently I am the president of AOTA, and I'm also an associate professor in the Department of Occupational Therapy at the University of Pittsburgh. And then my husband and I own an outpatient pediatric practice in a rural community and a nonprofit organization that really centralizes the use of occupational therapy at a populations level.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that. And I know our audience is probably, some of the audience might be asking, what's the difference between occupational therapy and physical therapy? Can you kind of shine a light on that?
Absolutely. So I often like to say, when people ask me that question, I like to say, well, what's the difference between a couch and a potato, right? They're really, although in very shared spaces, they're two very dynamically different professions. So occupational therapy has a focus on the idea that doing is what makes us experience wellness, whereas physical therapy really looks at what is it that we need to make well in order for you to do, right? So physical therapy has a high reliance on the physical movements of the body, a high reliance on being really professionals in that biomechanical sphere of intervention. Whereas occupational therapy professionals, we really look at things like the collaboration of the three most important pieces of wellness or doing, and that's the person, that what they want to do or need to do, and then the environment that has to occur in. And so oftentimes we're really looking at the way of just making it able to be done versus necessarily making the individual well so that they can do.
The occupational therapists in my world have just brought so much functionality to my day, being able to tackle goals, life goals, and activities of daily living, like my OT. So when I was paralyzed when I was 18, a wave just picked me up, dropped me on my head, and shattered my neck. And that was a start to a new life. I had to relearn everything. And if before my injury I did things 1 million ways, after my injury I did things 1 million new ways. And my occupational therapist showed me the 1 million new ways and gave me the ideas of how to do it or how not to do it, or these are your options on how we can approach this. So I know I told you before the interview today that OTs are dear to my heart. I love the OTs of the world. And so with the American Occupational Therapy Association, tell us more kind of what that looks like across the country and your members and everything that you're doing today.
Yes. So the American Occupational Therapy Association really represents the over 200,000 members of the occupational therapy community here in the United States. We do that at a global level with participation in the World Federation of Occupational Therapists. This is where we really see our opportunity to engage in being a member of the global community, a partner with other countries. And so where is it that we can support some of our learning resources and expertise to continue to bring this great profession all across the world? But then likewise, what can we learn from the different countries that we can then bring back to the United States to continuously improve this profession? That's just one of the ways that we work. A really and probably the most important two aspects of AOTA is our federal affairs team. And with our federal affairs team, we also have a state affairs team involved with that. Really, any way that occupational therapy is practiced, any way that it is reimbursed, what we are allowed to do, when we are allowed to do it, is all achieved through our federal affairs team initially. So without AOTA's federal affairs team, we wouldn't see representation in reimbursement from Medicare or Medicaid. We wouldn't be recognized as behavioral health interventionists. We wouldn't be included in certain funding opportunities. So really, they work at an expert level to create relationships at the national and state levels with various legislators, lawmakers, and lobbyists so that occupational therapy can really be included in legislation in a way that makes sure that we can keep doing what we know how to do and that we get paid and recognized for it. The flip side of that, we have our practice team. And our practice team is an incredibly in-depth and valuable resource. Within the practice team, this is a group of individuals that work for AOTA who are constantly helping to ensure that we are participating in best practices, that our clinicians, our students, our educators, our scientists have access to all of best practices, new research, areas of gap. It makes sure that when you are an occupational therapy professional, you're never doing it alone. If you encounter some kind of difficulty or barrier into being able to do something you know that is within your scope of practice, the practice team generally has either a person or a resource that can really help you to define and assert where you can practice and why. And then when we uniquely marry those two teams of federal affairs, state affairs, and practice, what we find is really informed communities that reach beyond the healthcare population, that start to understand what we are, the value that we bring, and then also have us represented in the spaces that we need to be. So I like to say that if you practice occupational therapy, if you are a consumer of occupational therapy, if you just like reading about occupational therapy, without the hard work of AOTA's federal affairs, state affairs, and practice team, we wouldn't be able to do any of that.
You guys, it just sounds like you have a very good team and a lot of people that care and pieces of the puzzle to make this all possible. And what are some of the different ways with the AOTA to empower occupational therapy practitioners to create solutions for daily living?
That's a great question. So AOTA really strives to sort of be the foundation or the basis of where our community can go, regardless of what you need. I like to say that AOTA is like my family. And I always say our annual conference is like Thanksgiving, where I see my aunts and uncles and cousins. Except there's
It's a great
there's,
reunion.
yeah, except there's like 8,000 instead of 12 at that table. But
That's a big family.
the big family. But what it really does to empower is it either provides you the very necessary protocols or intervention styles or best practices. So as a new practitioner, when I entered into the world and realized that there's oftentimes, particularly if you're working in areas that don't have a large number of occupational therapy professionals, you can find that person to learn from, that mentor, that individual who can guide you from from just being a student to a fresh new clinician is really hard. And so where do you go? And AOTA is really that place that can help to be that mentor for you. It can provide resources, it can provide best practices, it can provide guidelines, it can provide continuing competency and training, but it can also provide for you platforms in which you can real-time engage with clinicians all over the United States, educators all over the United States, and ask a question out into our OT community and say, I'm stuck. Can someone help? I don't know where to go or how to find this resource or how to really empower others to want to utilize occupational therapy as a participant in their experience and journey to wellness, right? And so in the early stages, AOTA is really your mentor. It's that individual that you can go to that really has some form of solution for where you feel the most confusion or fear or anticipation or just lack of knowledge. As I progressed, what I also found was that AOTA is a great space in which you can really communicate and engage with others that will help you to build your areas of expertise. I began this journey as a pediatric occupational therapist. I work a lot more now in still pediatrics, but predominantly in adolescent and young adult behavioral health care. And I learned about that, and I learned how to do that, and I learned how to challenge myself and where to find those competencies because of being able to participate in unique special interest sections within AOTA, by being at conferences and hearing the various presentations. So your ability to expand what you are able to do or really define an expertise or grow in a competency really happens at AOTA because we're not in school anymore. So we can't go back to school and engage our professors in this kind of learning, right? We have to look for a different space, and AOTA is the place that does that for us. And then as you start to transition mid-career and then into later career, it's this space to really give back. I have never in my life felt like I had a job or even a career. I felt like I'm on a journey, and occupational therapy is my calling. And that is incredibly remarkable to be able to say that's how I spend my life, on a journey to reach and aspire to my calling. And for that, I owe occupational therapy whatever I can do to support its growth, development, and success. And that means being able to help those who are coming into the profession, those who are transitioning to different spaces that I may have been in before. And so in your mid-level and going into your sort of later stage careers, it's the place where you can give back to the profession. It's the place where you can create and build your legacy. It's the place where you can ensure that those who want to be consumers of occupational therapy will be consumers, and not just consumers of occupational therapy, but consumers of exceptional occupational therapy.
I'm just hearing so much of that the AOTA is just has an atmosphere, has a culture of welcoming people in, making sure you're not alone, and that everybody can grow together and make the association, make the membership, make all of the patients have better experiences. And I love that you said journey. I think everything about life is a journey, and it's so important that we can do it so we don't have to do it alone, that we have crewmates, we have friends, supportive team members. We're all on this path together, and it's I'm very impressed with the AOTA, and I once actually, for a few years, I was a board member of the Maryland Occupational Therapy Association. So shout out to all my Maryland occupational therapists. And I would love to ask you, what is a memorable moment or story that you've had at the AOTA that's had a lasting impact on you?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot. I think about the very early stages of my practice as being one of the aha moments most memorable. Um, as students, many of us, of students of occupational therapy, many of us are members because there's tremendous amount of resources there that our institutions use to create an occupational therapy clinician. So as students, it becomes a very natural course to be a member. As new clinicians, it can be really difficult. You know, you're stepping out into student loans, paying rent or a mortgage, paying for all your own food. And so membership to the national and state associations can feel maybe a little bit burdensome or even like an extravagant expense at the time. So I will say that for about 6 months after I graduated, I lapsed in my membership. And then I had the opportunity while I was working in North Carolina to realize or experience that sense of loneliness, that sense of isolation. I was in an area that didn't have many occupational therapy practitioners, and I certainly was practicing in spaces where I may have been the only one. And so I felt that isolation, and I knew exactly that I needed to return to AOTA. So I did. And there'd be times that I used resources or connected, and then there'd be times that I didn't. And then about 3 years into my practice, maybe a little bit more, Medicare, CMS, came down with a ruling that said only orthotists could be reimbursed for the fabrication of splints. But see, I was in a kind of rural area in North Carolina, and I worked with kids, and kids are very different to splint, to work with to create splints than adults are. Adults generally can stay still, endure a little bit of discomfort. They understand and recognize what the overall outcome is. Kids don't, and it's really boring to have to sit there. And so I was often the only person in the area that could fabricate splints with pediatric clients. At first, I thought, who cares about this ruling? It's Medicare, right? And Medicare is generally for people that are 65 and older. But I forgot my great classes and that CMS actually oversees Medicaid as well. And about 86% of my clients were covered by Medicaid in some capacity. And so I started to get denied services. And I was feeling really frustrated. And I would talk to friends and I would talk to family and I would even talk to other clinicians, not necessarily occupational therapy clinicians. And everybody seemed to agree that this was not a fair place to be, but no one knew how to help me. And so I, one day on my lunch break, picked up my phone and I called AOTA. And at the time, the chief officer of federal affairs was a brilliant, committed, outstanding woman named Chris Metzler, and she answered the phone. And she said, "What's your problem?" And I said it, and the chief officer of federal affairs for all of our national association spent 35 minutes on the phone with me, brainstorming ways that I could begin that advocacy so that we could change this. She helped me to recognize that this was on their radar, and it was certainly something that the National Association was already moving towards trying to get changed. But she gave me ways to engage with my state association, my state legislators. She gave me language. She gave me codes and spent 35 minutes just helping me solve through one of my own individual experiences. And I thought, how could I ever not be a member of this association that's willing, no matter what staff is doing, no matter what projects are going on, the on the ground work of occupational therapy, the implementation of it day in and day out is what their primary goal is, and they support it in any way they know how. So
Going the extra mile.
yes,
I
I
love it.
think that was my aha moment, and one of my probably most favorite memories.
I love that. And when it comes to, all the patients around the world, many of them have disabilities. I would love to know kind of your opinions. What's one thing you wish people knew more about people with disabilities that they don't know about?
Wow. Where do I begin? One thing I wish people knew. You know, there is a woman, Lisa Mahaffey, Dr. Lisa Mahaffey, who does incredible work in the world of occupational therapy, and she's really done a great job articulating, informing, and educating people on how being a member of the disability community is not what we saw in movies, read in books, or see in the doctor's office. So we really have this shift to the idea of moving away from words like patient, because really you're consumers. Individuals that experience disability, they get to choose what they want to participate in, how they want their wellness journey to be experienced. We all get to choose how we want our wellness journey to be experienced and what that can be inclusive of. And so I'm not giving health care. I am offering a service that individuals can choose to consume or not consume. So one of the things that I really wish people would, the general just world would understand and recognize is that individuals in the disability community or who identify with a disability are are one of the largest minority populations in the entire world. And that means that we cannot keep looking at this community as a community in which we or other people or healthcare gives something to, but rather we have to really embrace the idea that um, we need to engage our consumers who identify with a disability so that we can be sure that we're actually practicing occupational therapy in a way that's meaningful and meets our consumers' needs. Doesn't matter what a theory or a framework tells us can be helpful in participation if it's not meaningful and purposeful to the consumer who is being directed to use it. So I think what I wish most is that the voice of individuals who identify with a disability are the most informed, the most brilliant, and oftentimes the best problem solvers because they usually have more than one way to do things. And that if we would really be more intentional about integrating this a role for that can only be represented by an individual who identifies with a disability in just about every decision we're making, not just in healthcare and public health, but in city development and safety plan measures and all of that actually we would find that creating the solutions is a lot easier than we ever thought it was. And it's just missing that puzzle piece, that voice, that knowledge, that lived experience.
Alyson, thank you so much for being our guest today on accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. I love your insights. I love what you do. I love your organization. So just thank you so much again.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
And Alyson, for our guests, thank you so much for being here today. And make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us at accessiBe_community. And as always, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Take care, everyone. Bye, Alyson.
Bye.